to us about binoculars. Binoculars by hand.
Thank you, Rita. Notice I showed up. Hope good things will come of it. Have you ever gotten advice from your father or your mother that made you think, this is crazy? I'm not going to do this. You know what I mean? The kind of advice that you said, I'm going to ignore this, I'm not going to pay attention to this, this is just out of this world. Well, that happened to me a lot when I was young, because my mother was a worrier. The kind of woman that would worry I wasn't dressed warmly enough, I was going to get a cold from going outside. Or the kind of mother that said, you're not eating the right food, and forced me to eat eggs. The kind of person that would say, don't run with a piece of paper because you might get the corner in your eye. You know, you've heard of that? No? Well, that's my mother. So I used to dismiss all her advice and all her comments as, just a worry ward. I'm not going to pay any attention to her. But something happened once that showed me another side of my mother and her advice that you might find useful when perhaps one day you have to deal with a worrier, a parent, or somebody whose advice makes you think, I'm not going to pay attention to that. This happened when I was a teenager living back in the Bronx with my family. We had a fairly big apartment in a typical high-rise, so I had my own bedroom. But since it was a high-rise in New York City, there were other high-rises all around. And if I looked out the window of my bedroom, I could see the house next door and see the windows and actually see into people's apartments there. Similarly in the back, another house and another house. It was pretty open. You could see everywhere. But being a teenager, I didn't care. I had my own life. I kept the lights on in my bedroom at night, the blinds open, and just went about my business, reading, maybe doing my homework, exercising. I didn't care that we were in a city and we all lived kind of close. One day when the bedroom door was open, my mother walked in. Now my mother was kind of feisty, besides being a worrier, a little shorter than me, a little heavier, and her name was Ma. That's what I called her. I called her that. And Ma said to me, Ken, you shouldn't be in here leaving the blinds open and the lights on. I'm thinking, okay, here comes something. Why, Ma? Because the people in the other apartments are looking at you. Oh boy, here she goes again. Ma, they're not looking at me. Oh yes, they are. They're looking at you and seeing everything you're doing. My mother is flipping. She is flipping, worrying about everybody looking at me. I said, Ma, they are not looking at me. Should I know they're looking at you? They have binoculars, and they're using binoculars to look in this apartment, and they're watching everything you're doing. Oh yeah, Ma, they have binoculars. Ma, how do you know they're watching me and they're looking at me with binoculars? She says, I know. I see them when I'm looking in their apartment with my binoculars. I see them looking back at me. Can you imagine that? You have your binoculars and you see somebody. Whoa! She must have had a shock when that happened. But I was thinking, my mother is not so crazy after all. You see them, Ma? She says, yes, they're looking in our apartment. And ever since that day, I pull the blinds. I make sure no one can look in my apartment with binoculars. And I understood that perhaps sometimes crazy advice is based on real facts. Have you ever had that? Where you thought it was crazy and then you found out, not so crazy after all. So the lesson I learned was perhaps people's advice can make sense, even if it is coming from your mother. So you've heard the saying, don't judge a man till you've walked a mile in his shoes. Have you ever heard that? So I realized that's not the right saying. The right saying is, don't judge your mother till you've looked in someone else's apartment with her binoculars.
What an amazing story. It's so fun, so much fun for us. We will remember what binoculars really mean in this context forever.